The Bay Area economy is thriving, absolutely. The tech economy is broad and deep and diverse, and so those are all good things. One of the biggest constraints, however, is our housing supply. Between 2011 and 2015, we approved over 500,000 housing units in the Bay Area and only built 65,000 housing units.
If you go back to about 2010, since then we've created 750,000 new jobs in the Bay Area, and that's from a baseline of 4 million jobs. So that's a huge increase in job production. So at its core, and everywhere else for that matter, this is basically a supply and demand problem. And we have a lot of people who want to live here, and we're not doing anything near enough to accommodate the type of growth that's required.
We need to build a lot more housing. People want to make it more complicated than that, and to some degree, building a lot of housing is complicated. You have to do transit, you have to build infrastructure, you have to deal with a growing population. But not building housing is way more complicated. Not building housing means that people are suffering and are on the streets every day. It means that families are pushed out further and further. Not changing our city is making our cities change a lot faster. It's making our cities unpleasant. It's making them unaffordable. It's making them out of reach for regular people.
I think there are certainly several cautionary tales. When I travel the region, going to planning commission meetings and city councils, and people are there, in many instances opposing the construction of new homes, you have to ask, where are the teachers going to live in your community? Where are the service workers, the public safety workers going to live in your community? In order for a community to be genuinely sustainable, there needs to be a diversity of housing stock so that all of the people who are required to make a community sustainable can afford to live there.
People don't know what affordable housing means. So there's two kind of different definitions of affordable. In the one case, you have subsidized affordable housing. We need to build a lot more subsidized affordable housing. But housing is considered affordable when people are spending about 30% of their income on rent. And not everyone is going to live in subsidized affordable housing. And we need a lot more market rate housing in order to end the shortage and bring down costs. People think that there's this conflict between luxury housing and affordable housing. And in fact, luxury housing is whatever they can get away with charging you. And they can get away with charging you quite a bit when there's a chronic housing shortage. There's this other idea that if you don't build it, they won't come. The bad news is we have a growing economy, we have good jobs, we have opportunities here, and if we don't build housing, people are still coming, they're just coming for your apartment, and they're going to drive up the cost of rent for everyone. Every time we don't build a luxury condo, there's still that person who could afford that luxury condo out there on Craigslist looking for their apartment, and they are out there driving up the cost for everybody. That person means that a middle income family is maybe not going to be able to afford a vintage apartment because they're now in it.
It's incredible how all encompassing it is to have a housing supply constraint. We see it in every aspect of our lives, and what's happening is people are being displaced, or they're working multiple jobs, or there are multiple families per household, or they're having to commute from farther and farther away. So all of those things create a social and environmental strain in the region and has affected employers.
In terms of a tipping point for other businesses to leave the Bay Area, I think that has already happened. I think the tipping point has already been reached. And I think we're starting to see more and more companies relocate or open up different offices in different locations for the same reasons that we moved our entire company to San Diego. We see typically shorter commutes, cost of living is lower, which includes rent. Employees can benefit because they're able to not have to spend $3,000 to $4,000 on a single bedroom apartment like they do in the Bay Area.
If people cannot afford to live here, not only do we lose our current residents, but it's going to be increasingly difficult to attract the talent that we need, and businesses will feel the strain as well.
We have seen some signs of it already. Certainly we have about 300 member companies here at the Bay Area Council, and we survey them every year, and they tell us what their number one issues of concern are. They're all of their issues of concern, and number one has been for the last couple of years the cost of housing. Jamba Juice was a Bay Area company, born and bred. They left a couple of years ago for Frisco, Texas, and as they left, their CEO said it was actually it's the cost of living here. They can't afford to pay their employees what is required to make rent in the Bay Area. We have to find a way to build workforce housing here in the Bay Area and across California if we're to prevent those jobs from leaving the state altogether.
Some of the big corporations like Google or Facebook are building housing for their own employees. They're also providing financing for affordable housing, and they're contributing to financing pools and things like that. Some of the smaller corporations still aren't sure what their role is there. They seem to want to engage, but I think that's something that we need to help them with.
Local governments and policymakers should really be aware of policies that have the word affordability slapped onto them, but don't actually substantially address the shortage, because this is a shortage. And there are a lot of ways in which we try to pretend it isn't a chronic housing shortage. There are a lot of ways in which we try to pretend that there is something we can do that is not building our way out of the crisis. We need homes. We need places for people to physically live.
According to the Housing and Community Development Department in the state, we're about 100,000 units a year short of where we should be to meet demand, and I think that's a very conservative estimate. It's probably closer to 200.
ABAG and MTC, which is the equivalent of SCAG up in Northern California, is looking at how to provide grants to those municipalities who are providing housing permits. We're going to be spending billions of dollars in transportation improvements in the Bay Area in the next 10 years, and the region is also looking at how to tie some of those transportation dollars to housing production as well. So it's really about thinking about those three pieces together: growing jobs, growing housing, and growing transit and mobility options. They really have to be planned together. So we have to think as a region. We cannot think one municipality at a time, what's best for my general fund. We have to think about the community as a whole and be able to plan communities that we can all enjoy, that we all have a place in.